Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So welcome back to Misty Hills here on Farmers Only Club. Going ahead with today's work. So big changes overall. I'm officially in a situation where I am kind of I'd say now a farmhand on two farms. This one, Lomerix, that I've been a farmhand on for a while, and then the one on Poppenberger on server 5. So basically I've got server 4 and server 5. So makes it simple. The work I was doing, the dailies on server 11 are done. And so I am here trying to get a little bit of a head start on what I need to do on this server. So just trying to get this done and go around a little bit. But I need to do the cotton fields first. And basically between now and March, that is where we're at, to do as much as I can with that. Well, I should be able to do all of it, I would think, because I don't think the plowing takes too terribly long. But, you know, then there's also some work to be done on the other server. So they're about 2 months behind each other, so they're not staggered a ton, but they're staggered a little bit. So what that means is then it's October over there, and so we had just limed fields, and now they need to be planted across various areas. So that is the work that will be happening there. But it gets me in a situation where I'm doing hourly work exclusively. I don't have any agreement that is, I'm paying you a flat fee for a day. You know, and I don't know that that entirely matters. It's just, you know, being transparent of what happened. I mean, it was fine getting paid the flat fee. Alright, we're definitely getting a bit of lag going on here. So I just wanted to at least start out. I'll definitely be back doing various portions of the work and just give a little bit of content here for you to be able to take a look at and see what's going on, and then obviously chat about things as I think of them. Obviously, you know, the similar stream of consciousness that you've come to know and love from the Mature Simmer, as I sit and just talk and let you know what's happening and how I'm feeling about things and what's going through my head and all those type of situations. Wow, this is a good amount, but sometimes this happens, so it just depends. With all that right now, while I let this go through, because like I said, the problem is I have to totally pay attention if I'm not on GPS when it lags. So let me just keep working on this, get past this point, and then at some point in the future, I'll be back. Alright, so I'm over here at the side of field 36, as you can see. So he's got a couple silos here. You can see just from putting them up what it does to the terrain. So there's definitely some challenges, and at this point there's some grass. The field area is 36 acres, so not very large. This is one of the fields that Lomerix has said he's willing to part with pretty much right away. So what I'm trying to determine is, you know, how much space I really have here to put anything down. So it looks like, because we're here, the challenge is there's a border there, so really my safe spaces are down here and here, and then the other piece that is available that nobody owns is 35. You know, I could start there. That was kind of the discussion we had, is I could start there and then he'd be willing to sell me this, so I would get both of these. So I need to kind of check this area out and this area out. And then the other thing he was willing to part with is 9 and 15, but he says that's because he doesn't like those fields. which probably means I'm not going to like those fields much either. Plus they'd be across the map, and I'd prefer not to have a farm that's that way. The other discussion that had existed is that it's possible the yellow farm might be willing to sell some things, and they thought like 51, 52, and 16. But looking at this, I don't have near enough the space, so I'm not sure. Like, honestly, looking at the yellow right now, there's nothing that I'd really be interested in, honestly, because there's just no space around any of them to go ahead and do anything with a yard. Okay, so the challenge with this is 59, which is the forest, is right up above there. So you can see, like, I'm right at the edge, because the question is like, the space that I'm looking at here, it does look like I might be able to put something in that space if I wanted. Once I get down here, that goes all the way to the street. The point then being, like, all of this over to the... Oh, wait. It said this street. Is this the street? I guess this is like a... Okay. So I could use all of this here is land that could be utilized for things. So there's definitely space here, because the other piece I was going to check is just what does it look like at the south end of the field, if I wanted to go ahead and put stuff. See, this actually looks to be the flattest area. Unfortunately, this may be the best position. But the problem is, putting things here just means, because that is all there, because the building technically is part of this land. Because I was curious, like, if I could even go down to this edge or not. So I could. And once again, if I had buildings, since I own up to the building, like, if I could fit buildings between these trees, I could do things, but the challenge ends up being, am I too close to the field to then go ahead and do anything? And then over here, it's a bit more of a challenge. But see, the benefit was, like, I was interested in some of these, but he said at this point he is not willing to part with this field. He just bought it, I think, before he left, and doesn't want to give up on it right away. But he said, he's not going to say he wouldn't ever, but he's not willing to right now. All right. So the border ends like right on this field. So for the field up ahead, which is 35, it starts right here. So again, like, this space here would be usable by me. We can see over by the road, there's too much up there by the road as far as contours, so there's not much I can do here. Like, this is a gentle slope, so whatever I put here, I'd be digging in. So the only real area is somewhere there. And it looks like someone extended a field. Maybe they didn't mean to. But yeah, I mean, in theory, like, that little bit could go back under, or could be ignored. I guess it does show up on the map. But all of this is also usable. So I could do things on both sides, and then right across there that we're looking at, those are the silos that I jumped to first on 36. So this isn't a bad option. I'm kind of sold on this, because this once again looks reasonable. And there's definitely plenty of room here. So I do like this part, because then I wouldn't have to put things way at the end. And I'd be thinking about things like silos and stuff like that. Although there isn't a ton of room here. But you can see, like, I go up to the trees, so there's definitely space, and then there's space there. And then you know, there's the piece here and the piece here. So I think I'd have more than enough to build into, but then once again, part of what I was looking at with these was, you know, like there's a ton of space over there, you know, and obviously up here. So now I've jumped to the north side of 38. I'm heading straight over, and I'm just trying to see what it looks like here with field 37. So yeah, so I guess there's some slope, but I think here, yeah, like this open space, see, this is wonderful. Like, this is really what I'd like, because I then have space between the field and whatever. So that was what I liked. This was everything that I thought it would be. And then this is the edge of 38 here, so there's a little bit more challenge here to putting anything down. But depending on what it was, as long as it was small enough, it might be workable. Although, yeah, this is less so. So this is definitely just, yeah, there's stuff here, but yeah, this is a gentle slope the whole way. So this, while a broad space, I had the concern as I get near the edge of the map, because that's kind of what I liked about this map, is, hey, it rolls around and so forth, but you can see, like, we're pretty far down from that level. So yeah, this really isn't usable. But basically, you know, and maybe this would be usable, or this. The challenge I have with this is the best way probably to work the field here is north-south. This one's going to be interesting just because of the angle. It's possible he doesn't like 9 and 15, because once again, they're not as easy to work at 90 degrees, and then you're sitting there playing around with your GPS lines. And once again, it might be one of those, like, you can't let AI do something because it just really struggles or something. So I'm not quite sure why he doesn't like those, but he's indicated he does not. So that's the brief interlude for what I'm thinking if I do farm manager here on this map. That's all that's been offered at this point. My understanding is everyone other than Shazam, who's the yellow farm, that is on this map was in the voice chat yesterday that we were talking, and none of them were willing to offer any land up, which is, you know, is fine. You know, obviously people do what they do, so I just operate within the reality. It's the same thing. I mean, you know, it's a sim. We're simming owning a farm, and like if I walk into a community and say, hey, I want to be a new farmer here, you guys own all the land everywhere, which would probably be a pretty common scenario. I doubt you walk into many communities that you'd want to be a part of to simply find that there's all kinds of marvelous land available and nobody has bought it. Obviously, if it's desirable, most people will own it and be working it in a farming community. So, and they're also smaller. I mean, Lomeric is the giant landowner on the map. And so I think I would have to go down the path of just start with 35 and then potentially 36. Because that's the thing. Like, if I feel, hey, 35 is good for a while, you know, I don't necessarily need to jump into 36 anytime soon. And by then he may choose to go ahead and part with the others. But these fields that we just looked at, if you're missing where the map is, when I turn onto the road here by 41 and 42, which is typically his grain fields, is what he's been using them for. You know, when we come in here, they're over by those hills. Like, they're kind of straight over and down to the left a little bit. So, you know, there's definitely... What is happening? I always love how I don't have the gas on, but it's just floating over there. Alright, yeah, it's just crop hanging out, which is kind of what I figured, but Wasn't sure. So let's move that. Put this down. Yes, I know I don't have access to this land. I'm not looking to. I'm just looking to get a good start on the land I do have access to and start plowing under the oilseed. So I've moved over here to 41 and 42 because this is going to be the earliest planting. This goes in March. So I'd look at this, if I'm slowly plowing, this is the first fields that need to be done. Cotton doesn't go for a couple months after, and so he's kind of got everything done, I think, by March on the plowing. But I'm sure I could explain, hey, I just didn't have the time, and I wanted to take it slower, just so that I wasn't spending hours and hours and hours in here. And therefore, I need through April, maybe even into May, to finish. I obviously probably prefer not to go into May, because May is going to be the planting time. So that means I'm plowing fields that I then need to plant. But that is why I'm coming down here. But yes, the big news was sharing that I did have the conversation with Lomeric about, okay, what are we willing to do? And while I couldn't get what I was hoping for, at least I got some options as opposed to nothing. And he understood as far as crop share and so forth. But we did talk about crop sharing, leasing, kind of what those might entail and how those work here in FOC. So the crop sharing is different than what I was thinking, to some degree, because basically what it is you do enter into an agreement of, okay, some percentage of the crop, because they're still paying for kind of all the supplies. So basically, if I said I wanted to crop share, say on field 36, and I didn't own it, or I want to crop share on these two fields, 41 and 42, basically I'd be responsible for working 41 and 42, but then when we went and sold the crop, I would get whatever percentage we agreed to of that. And then there's a limit in FOC that they can only crop share on 25% of their acreage. They can lease no more than 50% of their acreage. And leasing, obviously, then is like I'm renting the field, and everything is my responsibility. I think, again, with both leasing and crop sharing, there could be things worked out about equipment usage and so forth and what that would entail. Those are my options, and so if I wanted to grow, there's the concern, because otherwise I'm going to a map where it's going to be folks that I am not really enjoying as much as I've enjoyed the folks here. We just kind of think the same way, and some of it I think is just they're older folks, and unlike what you run into in a lot of areas in communities like this, they're truly here for the simming, which is very much how I am focused and what I like to do, as opposed to making it a competition. So I had mentioned in August, which is going to start tomorrow. Today's the 31st of July. They're starting a competition sometime in August. I forget the exact date since I'm not involved in it. I'm less worried about, is it, August 2nd or whatever, or right away on August 1st. But they're starting that competition of, hey, you got $5 million, it's a team of 3, you guys do whatever. There's actually farm managers here who are putting their farms on hold, or just doing something else, having someone run them. So they're paying to have someone run their farm so that they can be in the competition. Which, if people want to do that, that's fine. But, that was a conversation, for example, that we all had. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to any of us that were in the chat. We know it happens, but it's not something we would do, because we're here to operate our farm, and just playing operating another farm as a competition is not, it's not simming. I mean, again, so the competitors are interested in that, but not the simmers. And it's not, it's very much akin to what generational farming was, where at the end of the day that was a competition too. It was not land I was going to own long term. There was nothing I could do to invest in it. I didn't have to do what I just did, other than, hey, let's minimize the cost and figure out, can I put down what I need to compete as far as buildings. But I wasn't in generational farming nor in a competition, which you probably spend a lot of money on building a really nice yard and laying things out and thinking about flow and so forth, to the extent certainly that you would if you're going to be making it your home and you're going to be living there. So very much I'm leaning toward going ahead. So I think I'm going to start going down that path and figuring out what I need. So I've now gotten to the point that I have 1.3 million. Field 35 is 929,000, so that would leave me 400,000 if I was to do something right now, which to me seems not enough. And folks have certainly talked about, like, when they started out, they did what they needed to do, and it was a bit of a slog, and they made it very clear that it was a year, and it was not an in-game year, it was a physical year. So that would be 40, 50, or I'm sorry, like 25 or 30 years within the game before they kind of got out of that point where every year was still slogging away to get something that they felt they needed, whether it was a building, another piece of equipment, to get more land, whatever it was. And so that certainly sounds more challenging than the economy that we had over in FSN that I was in. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to proceed, because certainly I have enough to buy the land right now and begin, and I could start, not really put up any buildings, and then build up from there over time. But really, like, to get the fields, to get both fields, 36 and 35, I would need basically $2 million. So, and that again then means I just have land and I have nothing to operate it with. So what I certainly can have a discussion about is, can I lease equipment from them in some way, and basically tell them, hey, I'm using this tractor, this plow, for example, and your harvester, and I'm gonna work the fields and just do that for however many years I need to do before I can start affording to buy something on my own. Or I keep working as a farmhand exclusively and save up a few million more dollars so that at least I'm not starting out as a scratch farmer. But obviously that's more years of doing this only, because the other option is, there's nothing that says I can't own land, own a farm, and be a farmhand. So I could sit here and do stuff like this where, I made again 135, 145,000 here at Lomeric's farm by working it, and then it's the reality is though, that would still be probably 4 years of doing that before I could afford the tractor I'm driving. So it's still a long process, and I don't know. I'm kind of used to what I had done. Like, I didn't lease equipment from anybody in FSN. I didn't start as farm manager until I could do stuff, and then I was just operating things, and I grew as I could afford it. And I guess I can certainly do the same thing here. It's just I'm going to have to do what I maybe prefer not to do, which is I know eventually I'm going to need relatively large equipment. But in this interim, I could buy less expensive equipment and kind of grow into it, and eventually after, using something for 10 years, be like, all right, I'm going to upgrade to a bigger tractor so I can pull a bigger plow and stuff like that, which is more obviously realistic of what would be happening for most real farming. So if I'm simming things, so to some degree I'm leaning toward doing that, where again it's truly almost like survival farming at that point. But because I could go ahead with get 35, I could certainly buy a smaller set of equipment and a plow. The problem is I'm just not even seeing a path with 400,000 to just to even get enough subsistence equipment. Because to get, I'm not going to buy survival farming equipment to begin with. I mean, that I think is a bridge too far. I don't know, maybe 35 is small enough, because 36 was a big field, and so maybe it would work. I'll keep thinking on it. So I'm going to plow around for a while. I'll keep mulling it over in my head. Maybe I'll, bounce around and work some numbers in a spreadsheet, see what I can figure out, and see if that makes sense, because I don't know. It's intriguing either way, I suppose. And if I go, because the problem ends up being is if my equipment's too small and it takes me, 4 hours to do any work on that one field, that's 4 hours that I have to spend in Farming Simulator that I'm now not spending doing something and making money like this per hour. So in this case, I'd be foregoing, $32,000 of income that I have that also doesn't have any draw against it right now. I mean, that's the other benefit. Like, I don't have any expenses, so every dollar I make is simply profit because I have no expenses. So I'm 100% profit operation, if you want to say that. Where that changes if I've got equipment to maintain, I've got fuel to buy, I've got seed to buy, but yes, I am then, making a little bit of money. But the question is, like, how long am I going to be scratching along at that point? So I think I've got to look, because I think I'd want to at least start with like a medium tractor, as opposed to buying something that's 100 horsepower and can pull a 3-meter plow or something, because working that field that way would be miserably long, and I don't know how entertaining that would be for me, because I think I'd be kind of regretful. And once again, I suppose I could just park things and be like, well, I own the land and now I'm working another year to go ahead and do it. But it's just as easy to not own the land and wait, because at this point pretty much everyone other than Shazam knows that I'm interested in coming here because they were all there and heard the discussion, but so they probably wouldn't bid on 35 if it came up. They'd leave it. So anyway, as I said, let me mull it over, let me think about it and see what things look like, because certainly I don't think I'd be doing grass or something, because again, with the silage price decrease here, I don't think grass is nearly as profitable as it was. I mean, I suppose I could again run the numbers and see, but you know, even putting up a fermenting silo, I'm guessing those are still, I mean, at the base they were 100,000 for the middle one. I would think they're, you know, that they might have be even more. Those are the things I'll have to take a peek at some point. And, you know, if they are, then it just makes it even harder, especially when you're only selling silage at $50 or $60 per thousand instead of 180, 190 type of thing. So, I mean, it's going to take 3 times as long to make the same amount of money in a situation where the equipment cost is not any less than it was. So it's not like the equipment cost is 3 times less. It's the same or more. But let me stop babbling, because there's plenty of other stuff to do and plenty of other times to come back, you know, where you can see things a little more in daylight, and we can go from there. So I'll see you in a bit. Alright, so I'm back. I'm over here now on JRodeo, J-Dude's farm. Been trying to figure out what to do here. So he needs oats planted on fields 31, 37, 36, 32, and 35. So at this point I've decided I'm going to kind of run this way, because that seems to be the most logical way to do this. You know, it may prove to be wrong. But let's see, turn this off. At this point I'm going to run down to the next field and come back up, because I'll be able to do some of 35 that way. But I'm trying to get this segment done. I've got maybe 20 minutes or so of time left. I just was trying to get around the edges and had to play around a bit, so didn't start recording yet, and so didn't want to make it incredibly long with me just kind of bouncing around. So all of these fields here are grass. These are the grass fields that I had worked, and then the field up north is not planted right now, so I'm able to use a bigger turnaround here. So I kind of determined I don't really need any headlands on this side. But yeah, it looks like I can maybe run one, maybe a second time back at this angle, and then we'll have most of this done. You know, again, maybe 35, the last part will finish straight up and down, but basically I've run the edge headland at the side here of 32. Well, I guess it's 36. 32 is just this little kind of inset here. But of 36 and 37 up there along the house line that you've seen once or twice as I've worked this farm for harvests or baling or whatever else it was. But at this point, as I've said, I'm working more as a direct farm hand for this farm as well. I've gone away. I no longer have the flat fee daily work, and even the daily work on this farm where I was taking care of the sheep and all of that. The FM is going to handle that themselves, and it's straight field work is what they've got for myself and perhaps someone else. I'm still not entirely clear if they've got someone else who's active or not, or if I'm really kind of the main one right now. You know, I've swapped over here a little bit because there is the reality that this one pays me $5,000 an hour more, and I also have more time to do what's in the other ones, so there's always that balancing act because I'm plowing over in Lomeric and we've got 3 or 4 days to do that plowing. So I finished 41 and 42, which are the ones that had to get done earliest, and then basically there's a 2-month gap between us planting 41 and 42 and planting all the rest of the cotton. So to me, I have gotten the immediate need done, and at that point was like, you know, I'm going to spend the rest of the time I have, or until I decide, hey, I've had enough fun here. And sometimes fun is tongue-in-cheek, a little bit sarcastic, because I've definitely been having to manhandle this apparatus around the field a bit. Just even trying to figure out, do I need 2 runs on this side on the headlands? And I do, because you try to turn this thing sharply and it basically gets tangled up with itself. It hasn't been bad enough that I felt I had to fold it or anything, but it's just not a pleasant experience. I don't know how else to say it. Oh, this may actually get this entire piece. That's pretty impressive, because I really thought I'd have to come back and get some remnant here, but it looks like it will hit it all. It did. Awesome. We won't quite be so lucky on the rest of this triangle, but that's okay, because again, as I said, I think I can go out and back one more time on this south end, and then I'll worry about fixing that up later. That'll be the last piece, and it's possible the FM themselves will jump in. We're just kind of supposed to keep track of what we've done. So the other piece is, for whatever reason, this part of the field was fertilized already, so I'm getting the second layer of fert up there, so it's going to require a little bit of dancing, because we don't need fertilization, but without precision farming, it'll still throw it down. Like, it would waste the fertilizer and it would have no impact there. So it's going to require a little bit of different way of hitting things there. But we also have to clean up this stripe of lime. If you recall, last time I ran out of lime, wasn't sure if he wanted me to buy it, and didn't make the attempt to go look at it. And again, whether touching these up makes sense or not, it's just a little bit on those areas of the field, and that exists because of having to slalom around the bales. So if I had enough time, I could have picked them up, but I knew he would rather have someone else or himself do the bales. I think he said he did it yesterday. So and if I can't get all the way over when I turn around at the end here, I'm not going to come back again. At this point, I'll start moving up the other way, because like I said, I'm still going to have pieces of 35 here that I need to do. So if I have a little thin pass, I'll figure that out later. But at this point, that gives you a view of what I'm doing. I'm kind of waiting to be able to get my FM application in, and obviously I want to keep earning. I'll likely still be doing farmhand for a while, because as I've just done my initial analysis, I'm getting a bit of a feeling for understanding of the economy is harder. Just because of the decisions you're required to make, as far as equipment and so forth, is really kind of what is happening. So I'll explain more about that as I obviously start going down the path. But yeah, it looks like we're going to have a little bit here that we're not going to be able to get, but that can be resolved again later on. It's interesting. I turned that on and it looks like it just kind of sucked up the grass there, so got to be careful with that in the future, not turn it on too early. I didn't realize it would kind of plow that under or whatever, even though it wasn't planting there. But therefore, I'm going to need more income flowing in than certainly I needed for similar type of farms in FSN. So I think it's going to make for an interesting journey. That's part of the reason I've decided to go ahead and finally pull the trigger on that. It's not incredibly late, but I think I could have done it 2 weeks earlier. So I've gone an extra 2 weeks just doing farmhand work exclusively, where I could have been proceeding. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get as far as I can here, and then I will keep working on this. But as far as what I'm going to share for this work, there's canola fields that need to be planted as well, so those will likely be done as well. But definitely, the challenge is I'm going to ask for feedback, but once again, I'm probably going to be months later by the time these videos post and you give me feedback, so you're probably still going to be looking at 30 more episodes the old way, unless I just decide on my own to switch. But the question becomes, like, once I become FM, I think I just need to combine, and just do what I did before, is explain what I'm doing. But I would think the majority of what I'm showing you in the conversations we're having are going to be on my own farm, and with just a smattering of work like this, as opposed to, obviously, it's all been work like this because that's all I've been doing up to this point. But I believe that's going to change relatively quickly. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I will see you next time.